John Cena's imminent retirement presents an incredible opportunity to create a moment. Number one, whoever wrestles Cena in the last match will be the person, win, lose, or draw, that will retire Cena. In my personal opinion, this is the biggest accomplishment that anyone can have. You know, it would have been better if Cena was also the champion, because this would have felt like fucking Survivor Series like 98 or whatever the fuck it was. You know, where like The Rock won that multiple man tournament to become champion. It would feel like that. But they didn't go that way. They decided to just have Cody Rhodes, for some reason, defend the title against like Drew McIntyre. You know what I mean? Like in a fucking opening match. We could have had Cena in this pay-per-view. Anyways, it's not here nor there. That ship has sailed. But I personally believe that there are many ways to do this tournament that I think could prove successful in different scenarios. Number one, of course, is you have like a nostalgia-based, historic level match. I'm talking about something like, let's say, Cena versus Miz, Cena versus Sheamus. And if the world was what the world could be, Cena versus CM Punk, Cena versus Orton, Cena versus Edge, those kinds of, Cena versus Rey Mysterio, those kinds of matches are the kinds of matches that I think would do really well. And what I mean by that is I think people would be really excited. I think people would really appreciate the match. And more importantly, I think people would remember the match fondly, right? Because let's just presume for a second that Cena's retirement match is against Carmelo Hayes, right? I'm using him as an example because I think there's basically zero chance that it's going to be Carmelo Hayes, right? Now, if it's Cena versus Carmelo Hayes, right? Even if Carmelo Hayes wins, in like 5 years when Carmelo Hayes is getting the Austin Theory treatment, right? I don't think it's going to be worth it, right? So I think the legend match, if you will, we'll just call it a legend match, is probably the best scenario for long term, right? Even if you want to do Cena versus Brock Lesnar or anything like that, that'd be fucking awesome, right? Now, you could even do Cena versus Roman Reigns. Now, with all that being said, the alternatives are basically what I just said, and then there's the other scenario. Cena versus a young guy that Cena puts over in a win or a draw or a loss, right? I mean, Cena's going to get his moment. He's going to get his thank you, Cena moment, of course, right? Presumably, this is going to be the last appearance of Cena. Like, I don't see Cena coming out the next Monday night and just cutting a promo, you know? This is the last appearance of Cena in the foreseeable future. So he's going to get his moment, so he can't get like a post-match attack. So then the question becomes, who can take Cena out, right, without completely humiliating him? Maybe with them winning the match to get the rub. And more importantly, right, if someone does this, who is the person that stands to benefit the most? In other words, it's a function of their situation in the card right now and the boost that they would get, right? So for someone like Edge, for example, he gets no boost. Edge does not become more of a legend by pinning Cena clean and retiring him, right? I mean, it would be one of his greatest accomplishments, but because he's so accomplished anyways, like, it doesn't really matter, right? It would be like if The Undertaker came back and retired Cena. Like, so what? You know what I mean? But if it's someone where there is potential, they could leverage this into an entire career. That's how big of a deal this is. In my personal opinion, this would have been perfect for someone like, I don't know, a Velveteen Dream, if things had gone correctly, right? If Velveteen Dream now was a multiple-time, like, CM Punk-ish level champion or early Randy Orton level champion where he was like champion but nobody gave a fuck, this could solidify him as a big-time main eventer, right? For someone like Braun Breaker, this could solidify him as a big deal because it seems that Braun Breaker is going to stick around for a long time, right? That's what it seems like. I could be wrong, but it seems that way for sure, right? So with all that being said, it would be the worst scenario, in my opinion, if this match were given to someone that is a jobber and simultaneously cannot leverage this into a moment. So a bad example of someone to give this to would be Gunther, right? Ironically, the more likely of the people to get it, right? The problem with Gunther is, I mean, it speaks for itself. The obvious problem with Gunther is that Gunther has already retired Goldberg and it had a marginal effect on him. Nobody gave a flying fuck. You know, nobody gave a shit, especially considering that Goldberg's retirement was, you know, mishandled, right? Nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody's going to remember Gunther as the guy that retired Goldberg, right? Because nobody's going to remember Gunther. So this is a very delicate situation, right? You have to give it to someone that you know is going to be there for the next 10, 15 years. Like, you know they're not going to be, complete jobbers. And you have to give it to someone that could benefit. And I think people are going to be surprised when I say this, motherfucks. Cena, if he's going to lose the match, he should lose to someone like Obafemi or Trick Williams. Now, there is a big gamble here. The reality is that Obafemi and Trick Williams, in my personal opinion, are probably never going to be big stars, right? That's just the way that the hater sees it. I said the same thing about Karrion Kross. Nobody agreed. I said the same thing about Carmelo. Nobody agreed. I said the same thing about Andrade. Nobody agreed. And here we are, motherfucks. But I will say this. If any of those guys that I just mentioned, right, except for maybe Carmelo because he's just too small, but if any of those other guys had beaten Cena and retired Cena, they would have a shot, right? They would have a shot to make it. So, in other words, Gunther is never going to happen, right? The ship has sailed. You can be in the hater camp and think that Gunther's never going to happen, or you could be in the other camp that says Gunther already has happened. Personally, I don't think so. I don't think Gunther is a viable main eventer. Like, I don't think he ever will be. You know what I mean? I don't see a scenario in which Gunther main events WrestleMania. Maybe night one, but as we've established on this channel dozens of times, night one don't count, motherfucks. But there is a small chance that someone like Trick Williams or Obafemi could become a main eventer, right? In my opinion, this chance is so small that it's not even worth considering. But if you're going to consider it, you might as well give them this accolade, right? Because if, for example, Obafemi retires Cena, right? Obafemi will never have a higher moment in his career. It is impossible. It's like in World Cup 2014, when Mario Götze scored the goal to win the World Cup for Germany, and the announcer said he'll never score a goal more important. Even if Mario Götze scored the next winning goal in the next World Cup for Germany, it still wouldn't be as important as this first one, right? You cannot outdo that moment, right? Someone like Randy Orton or John Cena could, right? Brock Lesnar could have like a world-level match against someone new, and he could outdo the moment of him beating The Undertaker, right? And arguably he has done that. You know what I mean? Arguably he has done that before. So, with that being said, it comes down to who deserves it, right? Nobody really deserves it. Nobody really is on that level, right? And WWE has a track record, except for Goldberg, of course, of letting people be retired by people that are already established. So, for example, I know that AJ Styles lost to The Undertaker, player, but he still retired him, right? But AJ Styles was already AJ Styles. Like, AJ Styles didn't benefit from this in any capacity, right? He main evented night one, nobody cares, He didn't really, get anything out of doing this, right? You see what I'm saying? Likewise, the same could be said, for example, about Shawn Michaels, who retired Ric Flair, and The Undertaker, player, who retired Shawn Michaels, right? Imagine if it was Rene Dupree, Rene Dupree is in that Obafemi, Trick Williams zone, except in my opinion, Rene Dupree's ceiling was significantly higher because he was 19. He was better looking. He had a great physique. And quite frankly, in my personal opinion, he wrestled at a time where it was possible for someone like him to be a star, right? It was possible for anybody to be a star in that time. Now there are no stars, period. But if Rene Dupree had retired Shawn Michaels, Rene Dupree might still be around, right? Now, I don't think anybody expected Rene Dupree to become the next Cena. I expected him to be a mid-carder, though. So if he had gotten something to show for it, right, he would have a shot. So if Triple H or the people that are in charge want Obafemi, I think he'd be a better choice than Trick Williams for many reasons, such as the fact that he's not 32 or whatever Trick Williams is, He's a younger guy, even though he looks like two Kofi Kingstons put together. If you're going to push this guy, this is the way to do it, right? Because then after that, he can come out and he can be like, look, it's time for me to get my shot. But I don't see this happening because they're just too young, right? Not young in terms of age, but they're too, nobody knows what the fuck they are, right? Nobody wants to see Cena's last match be against Trick Williams or Obafemi or Channing Stax Lorenzo, It's not going to happen probably. But this is the only move that you've got. Because unless, of course, you go with Braun Breaker, which I think is the correct answer, right? But I also thought that Braun Breaker should be the champion by now, the same way I thought Jade Cargill should have been a champion by now. So if they decide to go with the NXT guy, right? Someone that has nothing to their name, like Obafemi or Trick Williams, this would give them a massive boost. And this could be what makes them stars one day. In my personal opinion, if Obafemi or Trick Williams don't get something like this, it's never going to happen. Obafemi is going to be like, at best, he's going to have like a Samoa Joe like style WWE run, you know? And Trick Williams, at best, he's going to have like a Finn Balor. Like, they might become one-time champ or some fluky type of shit like that, but they're never going to be the big stars, right? And if WWE is looking for a big star, which in my opinion, they should be for obvious reasons, this is the opportunity they have to make a big star, right? This is the opportunity. The next opportunity is whoever retires Brock Lesnar, although I feel like Brock Lesnar is just going to like not show up one day, you know? So that's a bigger problem. With that being said, it's like, that's how it's going to go down, you know? It's going to go down like that, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if they give it to Gunther, who has been given multiple opportunities, that's just not fair. Because I will say this, even though I dislike Obafemi and Trick Williams, even I, who have zero prospects for NXT producing any stars, even I can agree that Obafemi and Trick Williams are better than Gunther, right? I think anybody with a brain can see that. Gunther fucking sucks. So that's pretty much your only option, is you give it to one of these young guys, or you throw it away on someone like Gunther. Giving it to Gunther would be the same thing as giving it to Jey Uso, right? Where it's like, all right, you gave it to Jey Uso, it was a complete waste of time. Nothing came of this. You know, you've just wasted this massive opportunity to turn someone into a star. If it's not going to be storyline thematic, like if it's not going to be, you know, CM Punk or Lesnar or, you know, Randy Orton, something that people actually want to see, then it could be anybody. But if that person's going to beat Cena, it would benefit them if it was someone new. And quite frankly, in many ways, I don't think it's on purpose, but Cena has definitely pulled the wool over people's eyes, and he has pulled the rug from underneath whoever's going to beat him. Because Cena has said, like in interviews, even on SmackDown, he was like, I'm just not good enough anymore. C-Nation, you know what I mean? He basically said, like, I'm not good enough, that's why I'm quitting. You know, if I could, I would, but I can't. So beating Cena now is not even this big of a deal because of Cena's rhetoric. Imagine if he was champion. Nevertheless, the point I'm trying to make is the only people that have an opportunity to beat Cena are these younger type guys. Braun Breaker, but he's already on the main roster and you can push him in other ways. But if you push him like this, it's done. Who gives a shit if he's World Heavyweight Champion? Who gives a shit? Who gives a flying fuck if CM Punk is the World Heavyweight Champion if Braun Breaker beats Cena? You know what I mean? He's the number one guy in the company if he does that, right? Same thing with Trick or same thing with Obafemi. The problem is, I think it's too early for them. I think it's too late for Braun Breaker, so I think they're going to give it to Gunther, you know? I'm really curious to see what the brackets are going to look like and to see how we can predict it, because some people are going to be in the brackets, they're not going to have a chance, you know? At the very least, if they're smart, the finals will be like Sheamus versus, you know, Trick Williams or something, right? Which would be like, obviously Trick's going to win the match, but you know what I mean? Like, if it comes down to that. But at the very least, you give Sheamus an opportunity to, like, throw his hat in the ring. And that's another thing that I wanted to touch on a little bit, very briefly. If someone does well, right? So, for example, let's say Obafemi makes it to the finals, right? To the finals of the tournament against Gunther. I think a very possible scenario, right? Gunther's probably going to win the match. But let's say Obafemi loses because Braun Breaker, like, spears him or something, right? And then Gunther just picks up the scraps. That would still be a massive, like, good job for Obafemi, right? It would be a massive mini push, you know? He got screwed out of the biggest opportunity someone could ever have, you know? That's pretty big, right? So you can also leverage that kind of shit. It'll be interesting to see. But more importantly, this is a sad moment because nobody wants to see Cena go. Whoever beats Cena or loses to Cena will never be John Cena's equivalent. So it's already a waste of time anyways. But there you have it. Cena's not going to be remembered for his last match, but the other person could be, right? Unless Cena puts on the best match ever. At this point, I don't know why they wouldn't do like Cena versus AJ. Like, you know it's not going to be AJ. You know it's not going to be like CM Punk or Orton because they already had their matches with them. So that's kind of messed up, but it is what it is. So let's see how it goes, and let's see where it goes, motherfucks. But those are my 2 cents. I think if you're going to push somebody, this is the time to push somebody, right? If you have any intentions of pushing Obafemi or Trick Williams, this is the time to do it. Like, if you want to wait like an idiot, they're going to end up like Damian Priest, you know? And nobody wants to end up like Damian Priest. So that being said, take care of yourselves. Go fuck your mothers, cuckolds.